but he's gone now, and when I arrived in law school in the fall of 1984, like I'm sure when many of you arrived in law school 3 or more years ago, I joined a first-year study group, as I'm sure you did, and the 3 other people in my study group were Tony Herman, Gail Horowitz, and Elena Kagan. So life takes strange turns. Who would have thought all those years ago, as we struggled to understand torts, contracts, property, and the like, that one of us would grow up to cover the Michael Jackson case? It's really kind of a moving thing, and that I hope you have a similar experience. The court is really now at a crucial moment in its history. And when I suggested the people for you to thank today, I left out one important group. You should say thank you to everyone here at Golden Gate, the faculty, the staff, everyone who worked so hard for you to come to this day. Now, those of you who have been through law school tend to talk about it the same way. We tend to talk about the friends we've made, we talk about our extracurriculars, we talk about our internships, but in thinking back, I think there is one thing we often neglect when we talk about law school, and that's our classes, the academic experience. Speaking just for myself, I love the academic experience of law school. The richest educational experience of my life was absorbing torts and con law and local government law at the feet of wonderful teachers. And because you had great teachers, I think you have a special responsibility. Golden Gate has a great tradition of graduates who do public service. Your fellow alums include many prosecutors, public defenders, and lawyers who represent ordinary people. That's one kind of responsibility, but I think you as law school graduates have another special responsibility, and that's to think about and sometimes to talk about the Supreme Court. Not just those of you who go into litigation or public interest work, but all of you, because all of us have a stake in the Supreme Court. Now, I don't want to tell you what to think about the Supreme Court, except to say that I think you should think about it. You, as new lawyers, have a special responsibility to serve as a kind of truth scud for what's going on. If the past is any indication, you will be leaders in your community. People will look to you for help in understanding what's going on. For example, there's a lot of talk today about the subject of judicial activism. Well, what is judicial activism? Well, a former law professor at the University of Chicago named Barack Obama gave a pretty good definition the other day. He said an activist judge was somebody who ignored the will of Congress, ignored democratic processes, and tried to impose judicial solutions on problems instead of letting the process work itself through politically. This is an accusation that has usually been made against liberals, and with some justification. Roe v. Wade was an activist decision. It said that state legislators, the people's representatives, could no longer pass laws which banned abortion. Miranda versus Arizona is an activist decision. It said that all criminal suspects had to be advised of their rights, despite what local police departments might have wanted. Indeed, judicial activism has long largely been thought of as a liberal thing. It's what liberals do on the Supreme Court, right? Well, not so fast. What we're seeing on the court now is conservative judicial activism. Local elected officials in Seattle and Louisville created a complex and nuanced strategy to achieve racial diversity in their schools. But in 2007, in a decision written by Chief Justice Roberts, the court overturned those plans. The elected city council in the District of Columbia passed a strict gun control law, and likewise the City Council of Chicago. But in 2008 and 2010, in decisions by Antonin Scalia and Samuel Alito, the court vetoed those laws. Most notoriously, Congress passed the McCain-Feingold campaign finance bill, which President Bush signed into law. Last year, in a decision by Anthony Kennedy, the court eviscerated that legislation and decreed that corporations have the right to spend unlimited funds to elect the candidates of their choice. That's the Citizens United case. It's all judicial activism. It's conservative judicial activism. Now consider another concept in law, states' rights or federalism. That idea is very much associated with conservatives. During the 60s, states' rights was the cry of people in the South who didn't want to follow the federal government's demands for civil rights for African Americans. During the 80s, the great conservative Chief Justice William Rehnquist was a great advocate of states' rights to fight back against what he thought was Washington's heavy hand. But again, federalism is not necessarily conservative. Blue states fight back against the federal government too. As I suspect I don't have to tell anyone in this crowd, California has made medical marijuana legal against the will of Washington. Several states have liberalized laws regarding assisted suicide. The struggle for same-sex marriage has mostly been waged at the state level. All liberal causes. Don't let anyone say that federalism is always conservative or always liberal. It's the same thing with free speech. This used to be a liberal cause exclusively. The great Holmes and Brandeis dissents around the turn of the last century were all about the rights of the politically unpopular, the outsiders who were being punished for what they believed. But that too has changed in recent years. Freedom of speech is not only a liberal cause. Many feminists believe that regulating pornography is a matter of women's rights as well as free speech. The right to protest outside an abortion clinic, is that a liberal or conservative cause? And look at Citizens United itself. This is a case where the court embraced the right to free speech of corporations. Again, the categories are scrambled. Now, I don't want to tell you what to think about judicial activism, about federalism, or free speech, but I think you should think about them. The oldest cliche about law school happens to be true. You learn how to think like a lawyer, and I happen to think that's a good thing, to think analytically, critically, skeptically about ideas in the real world. When you think like a lawyer, you think like an informed and engaged citizen, and that's what I hope you'll be. And I also hope you have a great time celebrating your achievements tonight. Thank you.